Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional with an expertise in neuroscience from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, Dr. Nguyen Phuong Mai. Mai, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Dr. Mai is an associate professor at the Amsterdam School of International Business in the Netherlands, and she's an author of a book titled Cross-Cultural Management with Insights from Brain Science. So my first question is, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what got you interested in the topic of neuroscience.
Good question. Long story short, I started my career as a journalist. So it means I love writing and I love transforming information into stories that people can relate to. So when I changed my career to academia, a big part of the job felt very natural to me. I mean, as a journalist, you collect information, you try to see if there could be a story, and then you prepare question and you go to talk to the real people, right, to get the answer. Now, as a researcher, the process is quite similar. We also collected data. We try to see if there is any pattern in the data. Then we form the hypothesis, and then we test them in reality. So the end result of both processes are stories that can help us and other people to make sense of this world. It's so big and so complex. And that's how I got into my career right now. However, I left the university, Amsterdam University of Life Sciences, about 1.5 years ago. And right now, I'm focusing on helping universities and organizations to apply neuroscience into their everyday working life.
And for my viewers and listeners, can you help me understand what is neuroscience?
Well, neuroscience is a new branch. Let me go all the way back. So traditionally, there are two main approaches in psychology. They are quite different, but actually they are very complementary. So we have behaviorism. And this branch of psychology focuses on the external action. So how we can reinforce or change a certain behavior. And in this kind of approach, we kind of consider the brain as the black box because we focus on the external action, right? So if you look at the curriculum of many universities, especially if you look at management and organizational studies, many of these theories are based on behaviorism. And because we are talking about cross-cultural communication and management, right? A lot of us have heard the name Hofstede, Geert Hofstede. He's a scientist based in the Netherlands. And his theory has been the foundation of many organizational and management studies and theories. He has a very famous saying, you probably heard that as well, that culture is a software of the mind. So basically, the idea behind his theory is that each culture is like a software. So we have the Indian software, the Dutch software, the American software, and these software shape the way that we run our life. So when we cross the cultural borders, these softwares crash and they create problems. Just like you cannot run two operating systems in one computer, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's the first branch of psychology. And then the second one is called the cognitive approach. Now, this approach focuses on the internal, so, external, internal processes, the mental processes inside our brain. For example, memories, biases, attention, how information is processed, and how concepts are formed and formulated. So now, back to your question of what is neuroscience. Neuroscience is a new emerging discipline.
Okay.
Now, the advantage of new technology allows us to look inside the black box.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, we just guessed, right? But now we can look inside the black box. So it has sped up the cognitive range of psychology. It literally opens the black box, so to speak.
Okay.
So so we can look inside our brain, see how it works and how we process information. So basically, it's
Well,
a very simple way of understanding neuroscience.
no, and I
Yes.
want, as I said, we are not experts in your subject, so simple explanations are always good for us. My next question is on your book, and you've authored a book titled Cross-Cultural Management with Insights from Brain Science. And a few minutes back, you said someone defined culture as software which is in our brains, and therefore there are different types of cultures around the world. Tell me a little bit about your book and what was your inspiration to write your book?
Thanks for asking that question. It's always good to talk about something you wrote, right? You wrote 9 books, so
Yeah.
I wrote a few books, and each book is like a little baby that we have. I hope you agree with me. So neuroscience is a topic that has been both my work and my hobby. I'm very confident to say that that's my hobby as well. When I first found out that there was such a thing as neuroscience, I was overwhelmed with excitement. It was wonderful because I found out that a lot of what I'm doing at that moment, we can look at it from a completely different approach, completely different perspective. And a lot of other scientists have done that for me. So the problems in science is that we seem to be in a different, like going to the same direction, but we do not communicate with each other. And that is why interdisciplinary approach is really important, that we should talk with each other across disciplines. And that's what I did. Now, so back to that moment, I was still working back then in Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences for a long time as associate professor in leadership, change management. But when I figured out that neuroscience would offer me a different way of looking at what I was doing then, I decided to stop. And I stopped for 3 years. And in those years, I went back to college and I became a student again to study applied neuroscience at King's College London. And the result of those years of studying is the book that you just mentioned, Cross-Cultural Management, with the insight of neuroscience. So I just said with the insight of neuroscience because neuroscience is still a new emerging discipline. We don't know much, and we gonna have to change a lot of our understanding at this moment in the future. But much of the knowledge that I share in that book comes directly from those years that I studied as as a master student at King's College London. And I really hope that with a little bit of new insight from neuroscience, we may look at the theories and practices that we are having right now with a different way, with a different perspective, and with more questions, rather than just say that this is the truth and that's the way that it has always been. So that's my hope.
Well said, well said. And when you talk of cross-cultural management, how do you define these 3 words? And could you give me an example of what you mean by cross-cultural management?
Well, cross-cultural management is a branch of a very big discipline called cross-cultural psychology, and it has been there for a long time. We sort of feel that there are many cultures in the world, and there's something different among these cultures, and that is why cross-cultural psychology want to focus on in what way we differ from each other. And of course, when we move to different small disciplines, and we want to know how these differences would express themselves in the business setting. So when you want to do business with people from a different culture, I'm talking about different nation, okay, or different countries, because in one country, I mean, in India, for example, it's a beautiful example of a country with so many different cultures. Then when we do business with people who have a different cultural background than us, in what way we should focus on and in what way we may have misunderstanding, in what way we have some sort of biases, either conscious biases or unconscious biases. And that is like biases is a huge chunk of knowledge that I would like to share in the book. It's also a very big topic in training as well. It's called bias management, and neuroscience is giving us a lot of interesting insight in how our brain, deal with this way of, how can we have this kind of uncontrollable biases towards a certain thing, towards a certain group, towards a certain people, and not the others. And
Well
that
said.
was,
No, that's very well said. But could you also give us some example of some common biases that are faced in cross-cultural settings?
Oh, of course. I mean, if you mention cross-cultural setting, then cross-cultural means cross different groups, right? Different culture groups.
Absolutely.
So your question just immediately pointed to the biggest bias, and probably the most critical bias and the most complex, also the most interesting bias that we humans have is in-group bias. So when I talk about in-group bias, and I mean, probably in your mind is like, what is my in-group, right? Who is my in-group? And with that, who is our out-group? And if we have biases towards our in-group, then what kind of biases we have towards our out-group? So I've been talking a lot about this in-group and out-group biases because that is the most important topic to tackle when we talk about diversity and management. We talk about inclusiveness in management. We talk about motivation and the sense of belonging. A long time ago, when I was in Botswana. You've been to Botswana before?
No, I haven't been to Botswana.
Yeah, it's a beautiful community in Africa, and it is the longest continuous community of hunter-gatherers in the world. I'm not quite sure if that's the right way to say that, but I stayed with the Bushmen in Botswana for a long time for my research. And there in Africa, I learned that human beings are highly alert for danger. Hunter-gatherers must look for many potential threats in their living environment. So I remember the Bushmen showed me that, you have to be very careful. This fruit you cannot eat. This one you have to pay attention to the color, and also you pay attention to other people as well. It could be an outsider that you don't know, someone who speaks a different accent, a different language, who wear a different way, different clothes, who have a different way of expressing themselves. So back to your question of in-group and out-group biases, I want to mention something that is so important, that is evolutionary biases. Biases.
Okay.
That many times when we talk about unconscious biases, we tend to give it a very bad name, but it's not necessarily so.
Correct.
I mean, it has some evolutionary foundation of why we have certain bias. So, for example, let's talk about emotion. For example, what do you think? We have a certain 6 or 8 type of emotion, right? Depending on researchers. But what do you think? We have more negative emotion or more positive emotion?
It depends on your own outlook in life.
Yeah.
I
like your way. I like how you put it. Of course, it's contextual, it's personal, but from a researcher point of view or theory point of view, we have, as a human being, not as a person, as a human beings, we have more negative emotion than positive one. So we have fear, we have anger, we have disgust, we have shame, and we have sadness.
Mm-hmm.
So all these are negative emotion, but we also have joy and happy and excitement, all more the same. But according to researchers, we tend to have more negative emotion than positive one. And there is a evolutionary explanation for that, that many positive things can make us happy, even happier, but just one single negative event can lead to death. So we need to pay attention to something that is negative. We need to pay attention to something that is incorrect, something is wrong, because there's a saying that the chain is as strong as its weakest link. Right? Yeah. So historically, it has been very easy to, and you probably noticed it as well, it's very easy to motivate people based on fear.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Well
mean,
said. Well said.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you another question about bias, and that is from the perspective of leaders in organizations. How can leaders manage biases across cultures positively?
The most important thing, I think, in order to look at biases and managing them in an effective way, is to understand that biases are not all bad.
Absolutely.
Like I said, yes, it seems to have a bad names, but we need to understand that they are there to help us survive. The same way as we evolved in group bias, because we need to live in a group. I mean, we become the most successful animal on the planet because we, as human beings, would exist in a large group of 50 to 150 people. And the worst punishment that a human being can have is to be casted out, to be ostracized. Because when you are excluded from a group, when you don't have the sense of belonging, you face death.
Yeah.
Safety, wellness, status, food, the warmth, the love, the affection, that's all we need to exist. And if we feel a sense of being excluded, if we do not have that sense of belonging, then we face one of the most critical threats of our existence. So regardless if you are leaders or not, you need to create groups that people feel that they are part of.
Well
and
said.
that is why when we talk about diversity and inclusion, maybe we need to swap it a little bit. Maybe we need to talk about inclusion first, and then diversity. Because if we do not create a group that people feel that they are part of, then you are losing that person.
Well said. So I have time for two more questions for you, Mai.
Sure.
When it comes to cross-cultural communication, when it comes to biases, what is the impact of biases when it comes to communication, especially when you've got operations of businesses in many, many different countries with many, many different cultures?
Good question. I think the impact is immense, and what is really critical is that we must understand that while the impact is immense, we are not aware of that because that's unconscious biases, right? That means that we don't understand it. And neuroscience has helped us to understand that it is built in, it is hardwired that we have biases. We can't help it. It appears in our brain even before we recognize who is that person. So I'm now talking to Ashuta God, and in my very in my brain, before I can recognize who you are and know what kind of competent person you are, the way that you look, your gender, maybe your skin color, how you wear your clothes, your accent, everything have created some kind of assumption in my brain because it kind of search the kind of stereotype that I have been influenced by the society and try to match the image of you to those patterns that I have absorbed in my life, you know. So unconscious biases would appear in my brain before I have the chance to know who you are. And it has an immense impact in how we do business, in how we communicate and manage across different cultural boundaries. There are so many studies and experiments that say that the skin color, the hair color, the eye shape, the hair texture, and the language can have influence in how you pick a person for a job interview, how you call a person back to the position to give this person a chance, you know. And again, back to your previous question, what we do is that first we need to be aware that these biases exist. And then we can try to see how we can override it. Now, I said before that the ability or the capacity to have biases are hardwired. However, another part that is even more important, I would like to emphasize that, is that who belongs to the in-group, who we consider as in-group, that ability is software. So, for example, at the very beginning, I may see you as an out-group because it seems like you come from a different cultural background. But as we talk, we figure out that we have many things that we share, many similarities that we have interest in. Then slowly I can software, I can change the way I see you and take you as an in-group, as someone that I would consider, oh, he's my tribe, you know. So that is an amazing, incredible ability that our brain is capable of. And I would like to emphasize that because we are not hardwired to hate someone with a certain skin color. We are not born with the hatred towards someone with a certain physical, mental, or cognitive way of expressing himself or herself. You know? Everything is learned.
Well said.
A lot of fear, is hardwired. For example, the fear of noise, loud noises, or the fear of height. These are hardwired, you know, survival instinct. But most of the fears and trust and hatred and of course the opposite as well, love, affection, belonging that we have, they are learned. So that means that we can learn to love each other. We can learn to override these unconscious biases. Learn to have communication, effective communication, and love and affection with people who are at the very beginning seemingly belonging to a different group than us.
Excellent response. And on that note, we've run out of time now, but I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about neuroscience, about your book, Cross-Cultural Management with Insights from Brain Science. I think I learned many new things from you about biases, how our brains seem to adjust, and what you said so very correctly, that our first reaction could be very different when you and I meet, but it's the typical brain's fight or flight reaction. But as one starts to talk, one realizes that, to use your words, oh, this person could be from my tribe as well. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and all the very best to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutoshka, for having me here, and looking forward to when our paths will cross in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to The Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.